Greetings, fellow humans. Remember when I showed you a video of that 16-track MCI 2-inch tape machine? Well, that was at Flux Magnetic Studios, and that same day, I actually sat down with the owners, Victor and Konstantin. The conversation ranges from why to use tape in the modern era to what the New York City music scene was like in the 80s versus now. You're going to see the conversation move back and forth between two locations. Don't let that throw you off. It's my editing discretion. And without further ado, let's just get into the conversation. All right, here are the boys at Flux Magnetic Studios in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. Well, here we are at Flux Magnetic Studios. Thank you, guys. I just met you last week. We just had a look at the 16-track in there. Last week we had some really good conversations about like why tape, like why use tape in the 21st century.
Well, for myself, it's because it's all I ever recorded on. The times that I've recorded digitally, I was unsatisfied with it, and it's another skill set that I'm not bothered to learn. Simple as that. But it does something. It's not even a matter of like better or worse, like tape versus digital or whatever, but it's a matter of like tape does something in particular and digital does something in particular. What people like for like most like rock music and that kind of stuff with guitars and drums and all that kind of thing, tape does something automatically that you have to work hard at to happen digitally. You have to run all kinds of plugins or whatever to add the stuff that tape automatically gives you out of the gate. Now, some people saw that stuff as a detriment at one point, and then it became missed because it did something. And I can't even put it into words what it does, but it does something. And that's what I want in my recordings, what that does.
I suppose I should start with introducing who you both are.
Well, my name is Victor Dominicis.
Yeah, my name is Konstantin Prutin.
Victor, you own Flux Magnetic.
We own it.
Okay.
Together.
There's a few people paying the rent here. Like this whole thing grew out of because I was always did recording as a hobby and to record my own band, basically, And so this grew out of the rehearsal space and,
Konstantin, where are you from?
I'm originally from Russia, and I moved here about 10 years ago.
Yeah, there was originally another partner in the studio that
Oh, yes. Yeah. Studio drama.
As there always is.
You're like close to our age, I assume. And how does a person like you get into, these machines and stuff? What's your background?
Well, actually, I graduated as a sound engineer, but the stuff that they taught us there was all Pro Tools, and it was like 2008, 2007. And that stuff was full swing back then. So like everything had to be like snapped to grade, and like everything was like that was the gospel at the time. And then I worked at a TV station for a while, and then I moved over here, where I kind of didn't work as a sound guy for a long time until actually I met Victor, and then kind of reignited. I worked at IT for the past 6 years. I always wanted to do analog, but I never had access to it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, when I saw the stuff, I was like so ignited. I was like, oh wow,
ignited.
Yeah,
that's a good word. Today we just went over the MCI machine, and again, when did you acquire that?
That machine we got like a few months ago. For a few years, I was running a 1-inch 8-track.
And those other machines in there, you've been kind of just acquiring throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, like the Ampex, I've had that for like 20 years. And yeah, you just accumulate crap over the years.
You guys got it from a closing down radio station.
Yeah, a bunch of that stuff. Not a radio station, it was a duplication house.
When
they flipped over to digital, they just like threw a lot of that stuff away.
Oh wow! There was a duplication house. Where was it located?
In Manhattan. Yeah, there was like a window of time where like a lot of the radio stations and that kind of thing were like throwing that stuff away because it just was obsolete.
A lot of people on my channel watch it because I have a Porta studio. That's the main the main thing. And a lot of the guys and gals who are old enough to remember snatching them for $50, and now they're back up to like, you know, $400 or $500 for a refurbed one.
I remember when they came out, and it was like they were expensive. It was like, wow, I wish I had one of those. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now like back to their like original retail price or something.
Or less if you calculate, you know, like I'm really lucky because mine was purchased by my dad the week before I was born, and he's one of those crazy people who saves receipts. So I open it up and it's like April 1987, and the price tag is like $700 in 1987.
$700 in 1987 is maybe like $4,000 now. You know?
It's something a lot. It's a lot.
At least double of the original price for the MCI machines was something like $20,000, but that was in the 70s and early 80s. So that's like, I don't know, 50,000.
Yeah. Maybe more. 100 grand.
Less. And studios were going for $100,000.
Right. MCI was the budget.
MCI was the budget.
But just in the last week, that was the first time I heard of MCI. I was visiting you guys last week, and I looked it up. I mean, Eagles recorded on an MCI machine.
AC/DC, Highway to Hell, Back in Black.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin.
Yep.
Probably the Presence or something like that's recorded.
If you know how the machine sounds, well, this one in particular has very like distinct sonic signature. You listen to the records, oh, that's the machine.
Right last week when you pulled up the faders, and today as well. I mean, it's true. Like,
it just doesn't think to it, you know.
The recording, I'm like, this sounds like a recording from the 70s, like in the best way.
It adds like tons of lard on it, but like in a good way.
Yeah.
When is lard bad?
It's always good.
Unless you have a heart condition.
Well, anything with bacon.
Why, for younger artists who've never recorded on tape, what would you say to them the advantages of it are, and why still do it? Like why Flux exists for that?
Well, it's like the thing with tape is like you got to kind of be prepared, you know, when you record. There's no like there's no like fix it later kind of thing, which is like the way people record now. It's like, well, they'll record drums to a click track, you know, perfect that, and then the bass player will come in, and maybe the band members don't even see each other face to face, you know, and it's all done, you know, all the guitar tracks are laid from the comfort of, you know, your comfy couch, your air conditioner, you know, and then it's like, okay, you have like 100 tracks, and then you got to put that together and make it sound like something. Got to get the sound for all the drums and everything, make that cohesive, and I mean that's a nightmare. That's like building a house. It's not like, it's like sound design, you know. It's not really like recording. Where I think of recording as more like you're capturing a moment in time, a performance, like a photograph, you know, a moment in time never to be done again. And there's a certain magic that happens when you have like 3 or 4 or 5 people playing together in the room. Like maybe, you know, the drummer's hand will get a little sweaty and his stick will slip a little bit, and he'll do something he never did before that's an accident but doesn't come off as a mistake, and the guitar player reacts to that in real time, and all of a sudden they did something that you couldn't have planned, you couldn't have contrived, and sometimes little things like that are what makes a song the song, you know. Yeah, I have the multi-tracks like Led Zeppelin 2 and some of the multi-tracks from like Sgt. Pepper, and like you hear the individual tracks and you're like, that can't be the real thing, it sounds bad. You could hear all this finger noise, there's all this hiss. Like you hear the amp humming, you can hear the punching clearly, clicking. Yeah. They clip the end of that note out, and then you put all the faders at 0, and it sounds like the album, you know. It's like it's like magic. Like the way people record now, you almost shut the door on that kind of thing, you know. So it's about like really like having your song together, your performance together, and capturing that, you know, and getting the sound at the source, and that's the sound you're getting, you know, not like, oh, I'm going to fix this and morph it later and turn it into something else. It's kind of like we record that drum, bass drum, you know, and that snare drum and all that because we like the sound of that bass drum and that snare drum in this room, you know, and hopefully you put a mic on that. That's kind of what you're going to hear back. But this is the magic of 4 mics on the drums, you know.
Where are we at? Kick.
Yeah, this is a kick drum. This is what D12. This is D12 on the kick drum, and then it's like a Unidyne 545 on the snare, and then two Neumann 87s on the overheads. But it's done Clint John's technique with one by the floor tom, and one directly overhead like a mono thing, and you just pan it out. However. But that's all you really need to get a great drum sound. Yeah. It's one of those things like audio's funny because it's like you don't know you're missing it until you hear it's missing, you know? So it's kind of like you can hear like I've had so many times when I've done albums for my own band, it's kind of like you hear the CD version, say, or like the online version, and you hear, oh, it sounds great, I'm happy with it, whatever. Then you hear like the vinyl version or like the master tape, and you go, what happened? Where did all that sound go? What's missing, And it's that kind of thing. But if you never heard the master tape and you just heard that like thing online, you'd go, oh, it sounds great. You don't know it's missing, so you don't perceive it, But once you know it's missing, it's missing. And it's like,
Totally. And this reminds me of last week, we were talking about this, and to Colin's question about why young people would be into this is I really, I know very strongly that young people want experiences like this. People who grew up on computers, on their screens, and like there's a stereotype that they're just going to be stuck like that. But I firmly believe a lot of them are coming to their humanity and want to perform live to tape. That's a desirable thing because it's novel to them, And but
it's not just the novelty of it; it does something to it. And I'm not saying it's better at all. It's probably not better. Like it probably doesn't capture like as much of a dynamic range and all that, whatever argument, all that. But there's a pleasing sound to like a vinyl LP. That you kind of sense it. It's not even like an intellectual kind of thing. And it's not, that's what's missing from digital. I don't think that it's ever, just basically, for me, it's kind of like, I would rather use the real thing than, emulation, end of the day. If you have access to the real thing, why use a copy,
And we were just hearing on that 16-track performance by you and your group. Like, what was that experience? Like? Was it drums, bass, and guitar recording?
It was actually drums and guitar, and then bass.
Bass overdub?
Yeah, bass overdub. But it's still, if you can carry out a good performance, then it's easy to overdub on. Still live, and you want to preserve as much possible of the liveliness of it, and even when you dub, you go by like a longer.
Yeah, I mean, when they cut that, it was him and the drummer playing together, though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was the White Stripes. I mean, people seem to like them. Well, I just mean like in terms of
production methods. Yeah.
In terms of anytime. Victor was talking about a modern way to record is people sitting alone and overdubbing remotely or together, and just even having you and one other person.
There's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, people get amazing results that way. It's like, for myself, it's a nightmarish scenario because it's like 10 times more work than I want to go to. I'm way lazier than that. So it's kind of like, and
tape. It's the lazy way.
Well,
in a way, it is.
Well, like I was saying before to you, like in there, that like it's really like changing one set of problems for another. Because all the nightmarish stuff about using tape, all the maintenance and all that crap, is like that's one thing. That's a headache inducing. But then every time I've ever tried to use a computer in my life, I walk away with a headache too. I mean, that's got an enormous amount of problems itself, you know? Even Macs crash, sorry, you know? I mean, it's like, and it's just kind of, it's just like how many people have like had like these sessions running and they didn't hit save and it then crash, they lose everything, you know? So it's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of another.
Yeah, we've had laptops crash on a session. It's embarrassing in the moment, but
I mean, I just look at it, it's a medium, you know? If you're painting or drawing, whatever, you're painting on canvas or drawing on paper using pencils, ink, or paint, what you're using doesn't matter at the end of the day, you know? It's like what you're comfortable using, what gets you the best result possible. If I was to give a reason why young people should try it, it's because it sounds great. And it depending on what you want from your music, it does certain things that, you know, it just does on its own.
I got another one to throw out there at you, Victor, because you've been in New York a long time. This is an interesting town, and you've seen it change. And I'm just curious of knowing more about New York music and what it's like to be a part of that scene, and you know your experience in this city, and that brought you to this studio. You know, just kind of a little bit of your story.
Well, when I got into playing music and all that, like the music scene in New York was centered in like Lower East Side, like there. Now that's like, you know, Yuppieville there, you know. And so that all moved at one point, like in the early 90s, all that moved into like Williamsburg area and all that. And then that became all just like rich people, and that all got pushed out and everything. Now it's very scattered. But now after this COVID thing, who knows what's gonna be left in New York. But one of the things that I can say that's been true since I know is that the same amount of money that clubs and bars and stuff were paying bands like 20, 30, 40 years ago is the same amount of money they're paying now. It's like, you know, you walk out of a gig with $120 for the whole band, you're like, yeah, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's sad. It's true.
But yeah, I mean, it always like New York used to have a great music scene like in the 80s and stuff, and then when Giuliani came in, they put in all these like restrictive laws and then the smoking ban and all that kind of changed it all. Like when they changed the drinking age from 18 to 21, that had a massive effect on killing stuff, you know.
Yeah.
That took a lot of the youth energy out of the music scene. And that's kind of what it needs. And you need kids that are into it, that want to do it, you know. And if there's that barrier, it's like, that's it, you know.
Yeah, kids they don't know what's right or wrong, and they just go for it. I mean, it's really important to foster that. And so yeah, I hear it. Foster it with alcohol at 18. Bring that back. That's a side note.
No, I know that like a lot of like the bands I've been in and stuff over the years, we wouldn't have happened in today's climate, you know. Like it used to be like you could press your own record or go on tour and sell it and all that, like you know. And it was easy for a band to survive like that. You can actually do quite well, you know. And that's all gone, because you can't make that kind of money off like Spotify plays and that, you know.
Right.
What's the advantage of coming here? You know,
well, it's a good sounding room because we put some time into making it sound right. Like this was one big, huge room, so we split it up into 3 sections, and I tried to do it according to like, you know, golden ratio, so that you're starting from a decent point, and then it's a fairly decent sounding room. It's kind of like a little live sounding, but dead enough that, you know, there's no horrible resonances going on. And we get a decent drum sound in here. And the room is big enough where we can have people playing with amps and still get really, you know, quiet, clean drum tracks. That's really the goal. The main goal was setting a place like that so people could record the way, you know, people used to record. Just the band come in and cutting the record, you know. And you got this going on,
Yeah.
right? And you play it back, you know, you should go like, that sounds like a record. And then all you need to do is maybe like this, a little bit of that, you know, slight bit of EQing, and you're done. I mean, maybe a little compression or whatever, you know. But it's like it shouldn't be a chore because you should. It's kind of like the same way like all those Beatles records and that sound really good because they were like they made all the decisions as they went.
Mm-hmm.
So when they bounced down 4 tracks onto 1 track so they could continue overdubbing, that's it, set in stone. And whatever you add to that has to be in service of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, okay, I added all this stuff, now I got to make it all fit together. And we have enough flexibility, we can pretty much do it that way, all the way to, we could do it out straight into the computer, you know, with click tracks and whatever people want, you know.
And you also offer remote to tape service as well, right?
Yeah. Well, basically, they email me the stems up to 16 mono or 8 stereo, and we put it through our beast. We recover it, put it, you know, take the stamps back and, you know, name them, put them into a folder and send them back to the person that sent it to us, and hopefully they're happy.
The other motivation for like getting all this together too for me was like the last like 4 places I recorded with my band, like tape-based studios have all closed down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's just kind of like, well, there's not very many left in town, so it's got to, if we want to continue to record the way we do, we got to step it up.
Last thing like I would say about recording to tape for me personally is I'm trained as a live musician. I went to school for jazz. I play jazz. I've played live music forever, and I didn't get into studio stuff until recently.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I love about, like you guys were saying before, recording in a place like this is kind of forces you to be on your game as a live performer.
Well, it's all performance based, like, you know, digital, it's editing based. I mean, at least people make it out to be. Digital, you can
force
make
yourself to.
You can make it whatever you want, but
Right.
like, you know, the lazy side just takes over, and you want to do all that clerical office work when it, for some reason, I don't know.
Well, then what happens like is that like, okay, you do a great take. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's amazing that you can like, you have this beautiful take, except one bad drum hit. And it's kind of, it's wonderful that you can take that drum hit, move it over slightly, and fix it, and salvage that amazing take.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then what happens is you go, okay, well, this hit's a little off too. Let me fix that. And then, well, now this sounds off, so I got to fix that.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it's just like chopped up. Everything's perfect and fixed up, and you've just squeezed all the life out of it inadvertently, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's so hard to just stop, you know, because you fix one thing and all of a sudden you notice 50 other mistakes that
Right.
you could fix, and it's just kind of like, there's no limit there to tell you, leave it alone. You can't fix beyond this point, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
And you fall down that hole.
Yeah, and then also there's this thing like a lot of sessions turn into like, you know, office chores or something like that, where you have to like organize like 200 tracks or something, and you know, like,
Well, you have to sit there, label everything,
yeah,
and
label
make sure it goes in the
everything,
right folder and everything.
clip them, like move them, like trim them, make them like look all pretty and stuff. Like you know, analog limits you from doing that, and like it makes you focus on what's important.
And there's no
which is-
screen to look at either. That's the other thing.
No
Yeah.
screen to look at.
So you have to listen.
A lot of people look at screens like all day, you know, and they're
Yeah, a lot of people
You know,
look at that waveform and think about it.
and yeah, looking at the waveform, thinking about like, oh, is it like a sausage or is it like a kielbasa or is it like whatever,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Or
Is it like
fishtail
you
or-
don't have to look at it,
Yeah.
you have to listen to it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's like the Joe Meek thing. If it sounds good, it is good. You know, it doesn't matter how you recorded, what you recorded it with, or what the waveform looks like on the spectral analyzer, whatever. Like the way it sounds, it's great, you know?
That's a good way to end it.
Yeah.
Joe Meek, the grandfather of tape recording, tape experimentation.
Grandfather of doing it wrong
Yeah, yes.
on purpose.
Wrong on purpose.
There you have it.
that was a conversation. We covered a wide variety of things there, and please, if you have any comments or questions to kind of continue the conversation, please do so in the comments section. I also must say, unfortunately, as I'm editing this video, we just found out this from Flux Magnetic Studios. I'm gonna show something on the screen right here. This is an all too common occurrence here in New York City. Commercial real estate landowners aren't the most lovey-dovey people. So that doesn't mean Flux Magnetic Studios is going away permanently. They just have to figure out how to relocate. I highly recommend, please, if you enjoy them and the content, go give them a follow on Instagram. That's where Konstantin posts the most stuff from Flux Magnetic Studios. If you're here and you made it this long, you're probably a longtime viewer, or maybe not. You know my deal. All my links are below in the description. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you around. But with that, as always, is peace, and be good to each other.
It never feels like, oh man, that guitar is just not bright enough. And you start like EQing it, and then you go like, oh, that's just fucking perfect. And you look and you realize you're EQing like the wrong channel, and you didn't do anything, but you think, oh, it's something better now. You didn't think you,
Exactly.